Hi and welcome to winemastery.co.uk. My name's John Lightfoot and I have with me Haley Nicols. Hi Haley, how are you?
Great, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm really excited to be talking to you. Really excited. So Haley is joining us on Wine Mastery. I came across Haley on LinkedIn, and a shout out to Nigel Cliff. He was the one who basically connected us. Haley has a love for wine and has quite a bit of experience in terms of the entertaining industry and catering industry. And it would be great to talk to her about wine, and especially as she has a view of wine from the other side of the pond, and see exactly what she has to talk about. So without any further ado, let me get to Haley and let's ask Haley a little bit about how she got into the world of wine and how her career took her there. So Haley, welcome to Wine Mastery. So how did you actually get into wine? How did you went into the catering industry, is that right?
I did. I actually came up in fine dining. The first restaurant that I worked at I really was just captivated by the fine dining experience. I love the culture. I love the food. I love food. I love wine. I loved everything. And since I couldn't treat myself to such lavish experiences, I decided that I would just work in the industry because that's the next best thing. And I just loved it. I was very lucky to have a chef that didn't mind me looking over his shoulder every time that he was making his menus and making his wine pairings, and he taught me a lot. So thank you, Chef Eric from the Ballheaded Bistro, Eric Fulkerson. He was fantastic. And I just was captivated with this culture of wine, and it was something that I didn't have growing up. My parents do drink wine, but they have their wines that they drink. They didn't really experiment with other wines. So when I left there, I went to work at a wine bar. And that was when my wine knowledge began to really grow. Because working at a wine bar, the first thing that you had to do was go through a 4-week sommelier class. And it was intense. There was a lot that I didn't realize. It's a lot more than just, hey, this wine tastes good with this food.
Wow. Okay. So you started a sommelier course, yeah? That was a formal course. Was that run by? Is it WSET or was it?
I'm not 100% sure. We had someone that came. It was years ago. It was like 10 years ago.
It must have been when you were 12.
When I was 12, 10 years ago. I was 18.
Wow! Get out of here.
Yes. 10 years ago, I was 18. So I guess it was more than 10 years ago because I was at least 21 when this was happening. So, but I was just 21 when this was happening. So I was 21. But we had someone that came to the store that we were opening, and they just brought the wines and they sat us down and we went over everything. We went over the different types of grapes. We went over the soil, the conditions. We went over how they're picked, how they're harvested, how they're fermented, what they're fermented in, how that affects the flavors, how long it sits, how the tannins affect it. I mean, we even went into how the climate affects the grapes that year. Oh, this year they had a really dry climate. So this particular year of this wine has a little more bite than this one, or it flooded this year, so they harvested a little bit late, so this year has a more robust fruity flavor than the other years. There was a lot of technicality that went into it. I was really impressed.
You sound like you learned an awful lot. How long were you studying for? How long did that course take?
That was a very, very quick course. Wow. That only took a month. Really? And that was just their intro just to work at this wine bar. This is your beginning course. And then they had, there was a 6-month course that you had to take before you could be promoted up and everything like that. But the owner, one of his best friends was a professional sommelier. So he had connections with sommelier service, I guess.
Wow, wow. So, I mean, presumably that just one of the things I've discovered about wine is that the more you learn, the more it just opens up sort of outwards, and the more you learn, the more there seems to be to learn. It's like the more you chase it, the further it gets away because there seems to be so much to learn about wine, which is one of the great pleasures of it, of course. So you moved in the bar, and did you how do you continue there, or what happened after the bar? Did you move on to somewhere else?
I actually moved into a career in data analytics and marketing. So it took a little bit of a turn, but that it was hard for me to walk away from that industry because I do love it. And I miss it. I miss my kitchens and I miss my bars, and I do miss that a lot, but I love what I do. I love working with companies, and I have a big heart for the restaurant industry. That's one of the things that I love to do, is getting to work with restaurant industries and help them develop marketing strategies and plans that work well for them so that everyone can get to enjoy as much love for food and wine as I do, because it's fantastic.
Wow. So, but I mean, analytics is obviously very science-based. And I guess making wine, there is a lot of science to it, and people have to know what they're doing. But there is that art side to it as well. And so and I guess sort of serving people in terms of fine dining, it's all about the feeling that the experience you're giving them. Whereas when you're doing analytical stuff, it's all about numbers and black and white, rather than this grey area which you have in what's going to make someone happy and what's not going to make someone happy. So that's quite a turn for you in your career.
It is, but I can truly say that I think that bringing that passion and that artistic side into analytics is something that a lot of people don't do, which gives a just huge advantage. A lot of people will look at the numbers and they'll say, oh, those are the numbers and that's that. Whereas someone who has an artistic soul will look at the numbers and they'll say, there's a story here. So I've got the best of both worlds. Definitely so.
Excellent. And do you do a lot of work with restaurants in terms of marketing? Is that one of your key market areas?
We do a lot of work with restaurants. We spoke at the Florida Restaurant Lodging and Convention show recently before everything got shut down. We really work with all different types of industries, and we have people that have passions everywhere. And that's one of the other things I like about the company too, is everyone has their passions and everyone gets to work with what they're passionate about. So as soon as someone comes into the company and they say, oh, this is what we do, there's someone that space is going to light up and go, oh, I love that.
Brilliant. So our channel is primarily targeted towards the big beginner wine drinker, someone that's just been starting their wine journey, rather than someone that's sort of reached the heavy heights of that perhaps that you have already reached. So when you actually started, you used to drink wine as a child, did you, with your family, or?
I didn't drink anything at all with my family growing up. Here in the States, they're very strict that you're not to drink before 21.
Okay.
So I didn't drink with my family growing up. When I first started to venture out into my own world, I picked out whatever bottles looked pretty. And that was just kind of how I went about it. I really didn't have any guidance. I didn't know what was what. But it's a lot of trial and error. I mean, I still to this day will go pick out bottles that I think are pretty. You're never going to know what every wine in the world tastes like.
No. And I guess that obviously with wines, unless they're blended where they can use the blend to try and get some consistency of taste, Obviously, if the season is different, then the vintage is different. That will have its own effect. So it's one of the reasons I started doing this YouTube channel, is because I used to do a lot of entertaining. And one day I'd go into a restaurant and I'd be given a Cabernet Sauvignon and I'd be really, really pleased with it. Another day I'd go into a different restaurant. It'd still be Cab Sav. It might be from a different vineyard. It might even be from the same country. But I just wouldn't enjoy it, and I couldn't understand this. And I started to talk with John, my normally a co-host. Obviously, we're on lockdown at the moment, so he can't be with me. And that's really where I started the journey. And I guess I was looking for the reason I started was to find an answer so that I could say I am going to like that wine. And actually, what I've discovered is I'm never going to get that answer unless, as you say, you actually know that vineyard and you really know that particular wine. But there's no way you can either go into a restaurant and what was that? Was that a cat or was that?
That's my cat. That's what it's you. This is Kalia.
Absolutely, star of the show. It is one of those things where you won't know until you try it. But that again is one of the wonderful things about wine, that you never stop learning and you never stop appreciating the different wines. So if you were to give some advice, I think there are two things. I think obviously with the restaurant experience. But before we move to that, let's just say, if you were someone's just beginning wine, what advice would you give them in terms of how to decide what they're going to like and how to have some, using your analytical mind, how they sort of go through a process of learning what they like?
My advice would definitely be, don't be afraid to ask. There are so many people that I see here, and I don't know if it's a cultural difference, because we don't have as much of a wine culture here. There are so many people here that don't want to ask questions about wine because they're afraid that they'll appear ignorant. If they say, oh, well, does this wine taste this way? Do you think this wine would pair well with this? Ask. I mean, like, we've all gone through training so that you can ask these questions to us. Like, ask. If they don't know, someone else there does. It's okay. Ask questions.
Yeah.
If you ask and sample, if you're somewhere that has something by the glass, ask them if you can try it. Can I try a taste of this before I order the glass? Of course, you can't taste a bottle before you order a bottle, but if you're ordering something by the glass, can I taste this before I order it? What would you recommend? What would you recommend? This is what I'm going to have for dinner. What would you recommend goes with it? Don't be afraid to talk about wine. Just open your mouth. It's one of the most valuable things that you can do, is just speak, ask, share.
Do you find that when you're dealing, because it's one of those things, I don't think it is different here to there in terms of that the culture is very much that people feel a little bit they're going to look stupid if they ask, they should know. And I think especially, for example, if a guy is taking a young lady out to a restaurant, he doesn't want to look silly, he wants to know that he wants to look like he knows what he's doing. And I think also, if men don't like asking directions, I don't know if you have that in the States as well, but it's well known here that men do not, they'd just rather get lost than actually go to someone and say, I'm lost, can you tell me where? So I think it's just a sort of inbuilt that guys think they have to know and they have to act decisively, and just they're part of their sort of psychological build-up. So do you find that ladies in restaurants are more willing to ask than men, or are they also inhibited about asking about wine?
I would say that the big holdup for men is that they don't want to appear stupid, and the big holdup for women is that they've found one thing and they never want to order anything different.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So,
and honestly, as a woman, I could say that if you were my date and you said, "Oh, well, I think I'm going to order the lamb. What red wine do you think would go best with that?" I would be quite impressed. Instead, if you ordered the lamb and then ordered a Chardonnay, and then I would be like, "Oh, great." I mean, like, it's just ask.
Yeah.
And venture. And if you lose, you lose. I mean, I just the other day bought 3 bottles of wine to try, and I didn't like any of them. It happened. It's no harm, no foul. Like,
No.
you're not going to like them all, but you're not going to hate them all either.
No. You're going to find. I normally, I think it's. You're right. The people normally stay with what they know, and you understand that because they're hard-earned cash, and they don't want to waste it. They don't want to sort of spend whatever on a bottle, get it home, and then not enjoy it. So I really do understand that. But I always suggest that depending on how adventurous you're going to be, that 1 in 5 bottles, or at least 1 in 10, is a new bottle. So at least you can try something different, because you never know. It might be the bottle that you're absolutely going to fall in love with, and you love it much more than the wine you've been drinking. I think that just as a story to support what you were saying, I always did ask the waiter, because I knew I could fall over. So, but actually, in this occasion, I was with a customer, and we went to a very smart restaurant that he'd always wanted to go to. I asked what sort of wine he liked. He said full red. I said, "Is there any particular wine you like of red?" And he said Chateauneuf de Pape. So I said, fine. So I looked in the wine list, and there were 3. One was very expensive. So I thought, I won't suggest that one, but I'll ask him if he would prefer one of these 2. So I said to him, well, I'm not sure the difference between these 2. Have you any preference? And he said, I'm sorry, I don't really know either. So I could have pretended I knew, but I thought, no. So I asked the wine waiter to come across, and I said, look, we've decided we want Chateauneuf de Pape. We're undecided between these 2. We don't really know the difference. Is it possible you could just tell us what the difference is? And he bowed very, very politely to me, and he said, of course, sir. Certainly, sir. This one is red, and this one is white.
That's why you ask.
That's why you ask, yeah. I think the other reason I remember thinking this when I was sort of taking dates out a long time ago. The other thing I remember is thinking, well, if I ask somebody and he gives me a recommendation and I can't afford that one, like he asks a very expensive one or suggests a very expensive wine, and I guess it's a little bit difficult if you're on your own, or if you're with a partner that knows you're a unit. You can say, oh, I'm having this. What would you suggest? My limit is, I don't know, $30, $25, or whatever, and then you can work. But if you're obviously with a young lady and you're trying to impress as a young gentleman, then obviously that becomes a little bit more difficult. Is there any way around that you can think of?
I would say maybe pick out some bottles that are in your price range. Maybe have like your basic understanding of whether or not you want to go with a red or a white. And you can say, I'm looking at this bottle or this bottle. You don't have to say how much they are out loud. That's going to let your server or your waiter know what price point you're looking at. It's going to let them know what style you're looking at. And you can say, I'm looking at this one and this one. I'm open to other ideas though. And that's going to let them know kind of where you want to be, without saying, I'm looking at this $20 and this $15 and don't go anywhere above that. But if you let them know subtly, I'm looking at this Chateau Saint Michel and this Louis and Martini, and go about it in that way, you don't have to tell your date that you're being within a certain price range.
No, that's very good. Yeah, and I'm sure and you think most sommeliers would actually pick up on that in terms of what someone was trying to do. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely something that I would pay attention to when someone says that they're looking at this one or this one, but they're open to other options. I know that they're looking at this range to this range.
Oh, excellent. That's a really good suggestion. Thank you very much for that. That's brilliant. I really like that. So in terms of wines and in terms of grapes, what do you have a favorite for yourself? Do you have a particular grape or a particular style of wine that you like personally?
My go-to favorite has always been a Syrah. I love that like thick, velvety, but it's not everyone's go-to for sure. I have been, in the wine culture for a while. It's not a starter wine. It's definitely not something that I would say like, oh, it's your first time, you should try a Syrah. but it's my favorite as someone who has learned more about it. And the more that you learn, it's almost like the more that you learn in the brain, the more that you learn in your taste buds, the more that you know to be looking for, the more that you can taste, and the more that you appreciate the taste, and the more that you notice the smell and pick up on things. And it could all be in your head. Who knows? I don't care. I really enjoy the wine at the end of the day, and that's all that matters to me. But I like a Syrah. I like a Cabernet. If I'm going for a white wine, I like a really oaky, buttery Chardonnay. But I like something bold. I like a really intense wine. I'd like basically the opposite of anything that I would recommend for people starting wine.
Yeah. I understand that, because you do. I think that after a while you do. I mean, I actually drink less in volume terms now than I used to, because I am, rather than just drinking back, I am actually tasting it. So I find that my volume that I'm drinking has in actual fact reduced strangely. One of the things I think that I learned only recently was that you can train your palate. I thought, if you didn't have a good palate, that was it, you were done. You just didn't have not having a good singing voice. But since I've learned that you're right, you can train your palate if you're concentrating, and it does take time, but you can start to train your palate. And it is useful to have a look at some notes about what flavors you might try to expect from a bottle. But you can indeed sort of train your palate to get much better. Do you believe that? I always think that over here, I'm not sure what the equivalent price would be in America, because obviously the tax difference and import duties and all that sort of stuff. But in the UK, normally I would say, or John and I would say, that if you pay £30-35 for a bottle of wine, above that you're actually paying for the name and the shortage or the brand, and you're not actually going to get a lot better quality of wine. Now that's one view, that's our view. Do you have that view, or do you believe that actually if you do spend more and you are paying out, $50, $70, $80, that you will actually get a better wine?
I really have a very mixed view on that, because I've had a variety of wines at a variety of price points. And I've had wines that have sold for top dollar that I've tasted that taste like bottom shelf. I've had bottom shelf that taste like top shelf. But then I've had top shelf that taste like top shelf. And you can tell that there is definitely a difference. But those are normally like small batch. You can tell that they have taken great care. Someone in particular has looked upon these grapes and has taken time for them. This is not a mass produced. This is something that has come from one small vineyard that has made its way. It's almost a collectible. In that case, yes, paying extra, I do feel like is more valuable. But in general, I don't believe that a price tag reflects a quality of flavor. You like what you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, taking your earlier point, would you agree that if you're just beginning the wine journey, actually probably when you're starting to pay a lot of money, or more money, not a lot, but more money for wine, you need to be able to appreciate it. And if you're just beginning your wine journey, you're probably going to not know or appreciate what you're tasting.
Absolutely. If you are just starting out, there is no reason that you should be spending tons and tons and tons of money on really expensive wine. If you want to have a glass of a really expensive wine, if you want to treat yourself, like, go for it. But if you're looking for like your daily average thing, you don't need an expensive wine, and it's not going to appeal to your palate anyway. The less expensive wines are generally a little more on the sweeter side. They're a little easier to process for a palate that isn't so used to wine. you kind of think about like when you first start drinking coffee and you don't necessarily like it because it's a little bit bitter, but then it grows on you a little bit and then you think you really like it. But the first time that you drink coffee, you want to put cream and sugar in it and load it all up. You don't want to just go at wine with this harsh, abrasive wine. You want to start with something that's going to be gentle to you and your palate. So you definitely don't need to dive in with a really expensive bottle of wine starting off. You can absolutely start off with something that is easy on your pocketbook and find something that you're going to really, really enjoy. In fact, the first bottle of wine, the first brand of wine that I really enjoyed was extremely cheap. I don't even remember how cheap it was. It was cheap. And I loved it. I drank it for years. I always had it around. I don't like it anymore, but that was my go-to for a long time. And I'm not ashamed of that. There's nothing wrong with wine that doesn't cost you your arm and your leg.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the decision as to whether it's a good bottle of wine is simply, I like it. If you like it, it's a good bottle of wine, full stop.
Yeah.
So obviously living in the States, and I understand you're living in the I'm not sure, it's got a name, hasn't it? Is it the Garden State or something of America? That in Florida is called has a name of
the Sunshine State.
Sunshine State, the Sunshine State. That's right. Yeah. What a wonderful place to live. So living there, I mean,
it sure is.
So living there is wine. So obviously, in terms of Europe, wine doesn't quite have the same presence apart from wine, fine dining restaurants. Is good wine easy to get to? Do you buy mainly? Do they do? Is Syrah grown in America? Do you buy American wine or?
I will typically go to a wine specialty store here in America if I'm going to get something. Now, being here in Florida and being on the coast and being next to the beach, there's a lot of seafood. So most of the local wine is, it's all white. It's all very beach oriented. So we have a lot of like key lime wine and orange wine and hurricane wine. We have a lot of very localized flavors. And they're big hits. Not my favorite, but great wines for people that are starting out with wine. I mean, they really are. They're sweet. They're fun. They go fantastic with seafood. And they are here. They're local. There's things that you can't get anywhere else. Me, however, I just prefer a different style. So if I want to get the type of wine that I want to get from around the world, I'll have to go to a specialty store. And it's not bad. We do have one here. That's not far down the road. But we also have our local stores. And then if we want to get something that's local out of like California, we can go to our local grocery store, or even the gas stations here have wine. Where I grew up in Tennessee, our gas stations did not have wine, and neither did our grocery stores. And then I moved to Florida, and the gas stations and the grocery stores have wine. So.
Okay.
Cheers, Florida.
Yeah, cheers. So, in most people, when I've been in Florida, I used to shop a lot at Publix and they have a reasonable amount of wine because obviously the other.
Big fan of Publix.
Yeah, so they have a reason why. And also, what's very strange for Europeans, of course, is they have the liquor store, which is separate. Is very strange for us because it's all just one for us, whether it's wine or anything with alcohol. It just has the same criteria. So, in terms of the wines that I saw, I'm not sure because I was in a very sort of touristy part of the States. There was quite a lot of Spanish and Italian wine there, a little bit of French. But I wasn't sure whether that was just because of the tourists and people wanting that sort of wine. But if you typically went into your local specialist wine merchant, would there be wines from around the world, or would they be concentrated?
Around the world. We have a place called Total Wine and Spirit, I think is the full name for it. But I mean, it is just wall to wall. It's every wine that you could imagine from anywhere.
Wow. So and are these shops like very large shops? Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Really?
They're huge. I could get lost. I could spend days just reading bottles. I don't even have to buy anything. I could go in and just sit in front of a stack and just read the notes on the back of the bottles.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. It really sounds fantastic. Wow. So is there any tips? I mean, you've spoken about fantastic tips in terms of what you're to do in the restaurant. And in terms of, I think that we have, I think about 20% of our viewers are actually in the States. So are there any particular places that you would, in the States, just for those viewers, that you would recommend people try in terms that they're likely to give good advice and be able to guide you in terms of your wine purchase? Was it different?
I can't think of any places that stand out in particular. But what I would say is, find out what's in your area. See if there are places. It's worth taking a trip if you have a wine bar nearby. It's worth driving an hour if you have a wine bar nearby, just to have that kind of experience and get to meet with someone that knows, that can help you. People can help you find what you like based off of the food that you like to eat or the types of food that you don't like to eat. It's worth going somewhere and having a flight where you have, call it a flight, where you have, several different tastings at once.
Yeah.
Ask questions, find flavors that you like. When you find a wine that you like, note what you like about it. And then when you go and you're trying to pick out a similar wine, find, a wine that has those same notes to it. If there's a particular flavor that you don't like, make sure that you're not picking up something that has that same flavor. But my biggest advice for anyone would definitely be, don't disregard a type of wine just because you tried it and you didn't like it.
Yeah.
You should try anything twice. I mean, I almost went my entire life thinking that I hated creme brulee. I tried creme brulee one time and I didn't like it. And it turned out that it was just bad creme brulee. I can't imagine what my life would be like had I gone through my whole life thinking that I didn't like creme brulee. It's fantastic. Just because you try a Cabernet and you don't like it, that doesn't mean that you don't like Cabernet. It means that you didn't like that Cabernet. Even if you try another Cabernet and you don't like it, it still doesn't mean that you don't like Cabernet. It can be that Cabernets aren't your preference, but that doesn't mean that you need to exclude that category altogether. There is something in every category that will work for you. And it may not be worth your time to go through every Cabernet to find it, but there is one out there that you're going to love. And you can't just exclude a whole category just from a couple of bad experiences.
Yeah, I think that's
trying.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. And I think the other thing is that because one of the things we've discussed on the channel quite a lot is that, when you're in different moods, when you're in different places, when you've eaten different things, wine will taste different.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is obviously where your skill comes as a sommelier, to be able to, know that actually this wine will not, the combinations of the taste will not go, or, simplistically, it will just actually drown the taste of the wine. You won't be able to taste it, or vice versa. Or actually, when you get those combinations together, they're going to leave a not very pleasant taste in your mouth. So, and that, as you say, that is just experience. That's just learning and putting the effort into to find out. Yeah. Fantastic. So, is in terms of the states and wine, is that something that you think is still increasing in popularity, or is it more or less plateaued? I mean, I know we're in very strange circumstances at this precise moment with the virus, etc., and lockdown all around the globe. But before that happened, is it something that's increasing in popularity in the states, or do you think it's just the same as it was and will stay the same?
I think that there is an ever-growing amount of people that fall in love with this culture of food and wine, and that's never going to stop. I do think that there are people that have no interest in it at all, and that's fine. There is a part of the American culture that is all about beer and football and is not about sitting down with a glass of wine, and that's fine. But there is something captivating about it, and there are people that love it, and those people exist. They're not going anywhere.
No.
And neither is the wine. So I think that it's definitely a culture that continues to grow and is going to continue to be fed with more people as time goes on. It's not going to go anywhere.
No, and I guess particularly for California, because obviously the fires last year, and also obviously at the moment the virus and people being available to look after the vines, I guess they're going to go through as probably a lot of vineyards will around the world, are going to go through a tough time.
Say that again. I'm sorry. The wind blew.
No problem. I just saying that obviously in California they've had the problem with the fires last year, with all the fires in California, and I guess that's affected some vineyards. And now we have on top of that the COVID-19, and presumably that's making it difficult with people working and having to keep social distance. So I guess, as in a lot of global vineyards, that's going to make it very difficult for the next season of wine.
I think it'll definitely be an interesting season, but I think that these vineyards are going to find unique ways to overcome, and that the story is going to be told through the grape. And I can't wait to taste what the 2020 wines come out to be. I can't wait to taste the history and the culture and the story and the challenge that comes out when you uncork a bottle of 2020 wine. It's just going to be a phenomenal feat. It's going to be really exciting. And that's part of the thing that I love about it, is that each bottle has its own story of each grape that sat in that vineyard and sat in the sun. And it's not just a glass of wine. It's a story and it's an experience, and it's sharing that with you. And I think that the 2020 vineyard bottles are going to be full of story, and they should be celebrated. And I'm looking forward to the harvest. And I think that we should celebrate the farmers. And I think that we should celebrate the vineyards. And I think that it's not going to be easy, but we should do our best to support them. And I will definitely do my best personally to support them as much as I can.
Me too. Well, thank you so much for taking this time out. I know you just finished work and you have got a glass of wine to support you, but you've just finished work, and so appreciate you taking this time out before you get into eating for this evening. So, and taking out your private time. Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you, and maybe we can do this again sometime. Absolutely, I would enjoy that. Fantastic, great. Well, we'll make that. And maybe next time we can get John here as well, and he can have some input, which I'm sure he would have if he was here now. So thank you very much indeed. I'll stay on the call with you a little while after we say goodbye to the viewers. But for now, guys, thank you very much indeed. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. If you've got any questions, please feel free to leave comments below, or indeed to email us, john@winemastery.co.uk. And if you've got any questions you think that Haley would be able to answer for you, then I can always pass them on to her. I'm sure she'd be delighted to also answer those questions you may have. So until the next time, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to put the thumbs up. We'll see you in the next one. Chin chin. Bye bye.